Shut up and sit down.
This right here, Jimmy One, goes out to everyone that has lost someone that they truly love. Come on, check it out. Seems like yesterday we used to rock the show. I laced the track, you locked the flow. So far from hanging on the block for dough. Notorious, they got to know that life ain't always what it seemed to be. Words can't express what you mean to me. Even though you're gone, we still a team. Through your family, I'll fulfill your dreams. In the future, can't wait to see if you open up the gates for me. Reminisce sometime, the night they took my friend. Try to black it out, but it plays again. When it's real, feeling's hard to conceal. Can't imagine all the pain I feel. Give anything to hear half your breath. I know you're still living your life after death.
Hi, and welcome back to the Dialed Podcast. I am Jake Von Deering, and per usual, I'm here with Matt LeGrand.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
And Evan Price.
How's it going?
And we've got Lance on Skype today. And Lance, are you there?
I'm here. Lance on location today. I'm in Las Vegas.
Vegas.
Today is a rough one. We went back and forth on whether or not we should actually even do a podcast this week, but we decided that it might be somewhat therapeutic as we lost one of our dear friends and teammates, Michael Myers. And we wanted to come on and basically kind of share our thoughts today and talk about Michael and honor him. And hopefully those of you guys out there listening who knew him can find some solace in this as well. So we are going to backpedal today, but we're going to backpedal basically on remembering our friend Michael Myers. And I am really curious to hear some of the great stories that you guys have to share. That has been something that's been tremendous for me, is getting to hear all of the stories from all of the other people out there. And I know that our group of guys here, our podcast team, if you will, all knew Mike pretty well and have spent a lot of time riding and racing with him and going to, just hang out and do fun stuff. And he's one of those guys that you can just describe him as the salt of the earth. I mean, You're not going to find a guy that's much nicer or much more generous and giving than him. You're going to be hard pressed. So on that note, let's remember Michael Myers. Lance, why don't you share a story with us? You got anything?
I have a dozen Michael Myers stories, but the first one is kind of interesting. About the time I actually met Michael, I was it was during the Jack Frost time trial. I want to say this was 2 or 3 years ago. I think it was 2 years ago. I had gone out to do the Jack Frost time trial and feeling really fit and fast, and got out to the race and headed out there. And it's an 11 or 12 mile time trial. I am I'm like 15 minutes into it or something like that. And I got blown by. Somebody went flying around me so fast that I thought I was doing well and I was catching people. And all of a sudden, this dude just flew around me. And that was Michael Myers. And afterwards, I'm like, because I'd been following him on Strava, but I hadn't met him before. And I'm like, dude, who are you? You went past me like I was standing still. And I'm like, I'm Michael Myers. I'm like, oh my gosh. So
he definitely had a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde component about him. I mean, just the nicest guy that you'll ever meet. And then you get him on a bike and put him into a competition, and the beast comes out.
He was an animal on that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Lance got mic'd right there. That's a mic. It's just this steady drop. You're just not catching that wheel for anything in you.
It was one of those situations where, like, am I in the wrong sport? Because that was embarrassing.
Is he on an e-bike right now?
Yeah,
that's a good one.
That was how I first met him.
Yeah. How about you, Evan?
So I've been out here now a little over a year and a half, and there's been a few people I've gotten really close to in my time out here. Obviously, everybody at this table in the cycling world, and lucky enough for me, it was about a little over a year ago now is when I got to meet Mike, and he was somebody who, just being a young person in the medical field too, like he's somebody I looked up to, and asked a lot of advice from, and whether it was talking specific cycling training or how to not be a bad medical professional, because he was an incredible one, and I'm still trying to figure it out. He was, he was somebody I definitely looked up to. And one of, just like Lance, I've got a ton of stories just from the rides we've done, but the one to me that happened most recently was when I crashed a few weeks ago and fell into a ditch. And I still remember, like, Dustin and Mike were both on that ride with me, and Mike's first response was to pull over so quick and immediately jump down to the ditch and grab me and pull me up, and pulled me up, and then he chased back down the hill to get the bike, which I appreciated because I was fine and I was much more concerned about the bike. So he was just somebody who had that natural caring spirit about him. And I'm sure if you talk to everybody who's probably worked with him in his medical career, they would say that same thing, is that somebody who works in the oncology field, you have to have that caring spirit about you, because that's not an easy field to be in.
Right.
And he's absolutely that person. But we'll go around the story with stories here, but there's some stories I could tell about Mike dropping me so hard that it's just,
Was that the crash that you had most recently with kind of...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So he was the as soon as I was trying to stand up, he's like, don't move. And he just kind of dragged me up out of the hole. So,
okay.
But yeah, just an awesome guy, and such a fast bike rider. I
know, right?
God, there was the one before we pass over to Matter that I'll tell too is, on Saturday, we did a Bridge of the Gods ride that Mike had planned out, and we had gone up Gibson, which is a climb that he was really strong on. Gibson. There's like certain climbs that Mike just killed, and like Gibson's the type of climb that he just, for
it's long enough.
Yeah. So to describe Gibson as a climb, it's steady at portions, and then it'll steepen out, flatten out, steepen out, flatten out. Mm-hmm. And then at the end, it has this little downhill segment that hits this kind of steep, steady climb right after to end the climb, basically. Yep. And there was once in my head, I thought I had finally dropped Mike. I'm like, oh, thank God I've gotten away from him. And we hit this downhill. I'm like, okay, tuck in. We hit this climb, and he goes by me so fast out of the saddle for the entire remaining 3 minutes of this segment that I actually lose sight of him. This is only like an 800-meter climb, and I lost sight of him in that 800 meters. But we were talking about that on Saturday, and we're like, yeah, I think that's the fastest I've ever seen anybody go up that segment. Even Lance, he beat Lance. Like, I think Lance, you killed that thing once too, but he went up that so fast. But yeah,
he dropped me every time we rode up that climb together. Every time.
That was his climb. Every single time I do that, I'll be like, well, it wasn't as fast as Mike did it. So
that was always a fun stretch of road.
Oh yeah. Like, yeah.
He and I, we would trade back and forth on that over the course.
Who has that KOM? You or Mike right now?
For the full Gibson?
Yeah.
I have it.
You have it? Oh, man.
But I'm sure that if he went out there and he wanted to get after, because it's if you do the whole thing and you're flying, you're about 20, and I used it for an FTP test, and that's why I have it. I'm sure if he went out there and had done an FTP test,
he'd be right there.
Not even right there, he would have buried me.
He would have gotten you. Yeah.
I just don't think that he did the full thing, like at
the time we went up it. If he would have full blast that thing, I'm sure I don't think I've ever seen anybody go up a steep grade like that fast.
Yeah. He was one of those guys too that would intentionally, like, sometimes he was like, when you're playing, going back and forth and taking segments from each other, that's fine. But when he sees a solid effort out there, like he would be the kind of guy that would pull up 100 meters before the finish and just let you keep it, knowing in the back of his head, I got him. Yeah. So that's just the kind of guy Mike was. So. How about you, Matt?
Yeah. So, definitely amazing person. It's, I think it's been hard on our community for sure, to deal with his passing. Last time I rode with him, I think was it's been a little while. I guess Kentucky Hustle or whatever we're calling that ride.
Yeah.
I
forgot about that.
Couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And of course, I was late because I was swimming before or something like that, and I was like, "Oh, I'll go catch up to you guys or whatever."
I remember this.
And I came, I came up and I kind of was like, I knew the group would come up on my back or whatever, and I think you guys were kind of on your second of 3 laps or second of 4 laps or something like that.
Mike was on the front at that point.
That's my point. Is I was riding and I was kind of going not super fast or whatever, but decent, and he caught me first, and he was clearly in a breakaway from the group.
Yeah.
It was obviously he's a super strong athlete or was a super strong athlete. And it's just like, you see like, okay, he's broken away from this group. I know he's hurting. And I'm like, you don't have to talk to me. You don't have to, like trying to be like, keep going, kind of like cheering. Right. Cause I'm as big of a fan as anything else. And he's like, oh, hey, Matt, how's it going? Like, and I'm like,
he's at like 180 beats a minute and still able to introduce himself.
I know.
Say, hey.
Like, he was just so genuinely excited to see me out on the road or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if he knew I was going to join the group or whatever, but of course I like tried to hop on the back of the group and I hung for a little while and then I got dropped from the entire group. Obviously I can't. One of the reasons I will have less stories of riding with Mike is because he was so fast that I just literally, I could not ride with him.
All of my stories are just looking at his wheel. So that's basically all it is. It's just in his draft.
Having in-ride stories with Michael is tough because every time you would go riding with him, I don't know if it was just me or if it was all of you guys.
Yeah.
You weren't talking. You were too busy like trying to put oxygen back into your body.
And that's where I know
each other up.
I know me and Jake have talked about that, but I mean, I was so I consider myself truly, truly lucky to be somebody over the last year who's gotten to ride with him a lot. And but when I say ride with him, it was mostly, all right, Mike, what are we doing today? Oh, we're just going to ride tempo. Tempo in Mike's world meant I'm going to try and kill you.
Yeah.
And he would hammer the whole ride. You're just holding on to his wheel, hoping that, oh man, I hope he's not going to accelerate over this hill right now.
Yeah, the guy was 51 years old.
Yeah.
And rode like he was 30.
He was 31. Yeah, that guy was 31.
Just insanely strong and insanely fast. And love the sport like dearly.
And just such a, I mean, we talk about this all the time with a-holery, and this is where, I mean, Matt, your story speaks to that, is there's plenty of guys with that. I mean, plenty of guys are as fast as Mike out there in this country.
Well,
but
and it's just like the majority of people in the same situation, you're in a breakaway from, I mean, you guys are going race pace.
Yeah.
Right.
You don't stop and say, hey, Matt. And I mean, he didn't stop, but I mean, like, you don't say like, oh, hey, Matt.
He took his head up from the road.
Head up from the road, like, acknowledge, hey, how's it going? Good to see you, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, keep going. You know,
how
like,
many
I know
elite cyclists would just keep their head down and pretend like you didn't even exist?
Even most of us, right? Where it's just like, we know you're going hard. Like, if you did that and you kept rolling, I would have no problem. Like, go. Like, you're in a breakaway.
Yeah.
You know, this is just the situation was just like, he's just such an amazing person. Like, you know, it's such a tough situation.
He just genuinely enjoyed. I mean, we all love bike riding, but Mike genuinely enjoyed riding his bike hard.
Yeah.
Like, let's be honest, most of us don't really like riding our bike really hard. Like, we like being out on the rides, but like nobody likes hanging in zone 4 for that long. Yeah. I think Mike truly enjoyed like hurting on the bike like that, and that to me is like inspirational. I mean, that's truly inspirational. It really is. But
He really did use cycling quite a bit to keep him like level. I mean, that was like his the catalyst to get him back to normalcy. I mean, his work life and the demands that were placed upon him from his work life and the hours that he was working, and then having to deal with potentially losing patients that are like like becoming your friends that you worked with. I mean, that's a strain on you. And he always told me that cycling was his outlet. That's what kept him normal. That's what kept him balanced and sane. And I think that whole going out there and just killing it was like the icing on the cake for him. That really just brought him down. And then he would come home from his rides and it's like all about his wife and his boys. And it's just, my heart aches for them. But I mean, that was a good thing for him and his family and his work life. It was the thing that kept him sane.
Yeah. I mean, you have a person that just genuinely cares that much about people. And his profession was, he dealt
That's
with
one of the most stressful.
He dealt with loss.
Oncology field.
He dealt with loss on a weekly basis.
I know.
And Jake can talk to this, but like he was affected absolutely when he had a rough week.
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, gosh, there's not that many good people on this planet, and it's really tough.
And I'd get that call, and that's another thing that kind of just really. I'm saddened by the fact that over the last 5 months, I haven't had the pleasure to ride with him because I haven't been able to get on the bike, and it just drives me absolutely crazy because he and I would ride together consistently at least once a week. I mean, we'd always try and find time to plug
down
into
the
each other.
street from you. Yeah,
and we did all of the weekend rides together, and like when when it was summertime and it was nice out, we were riding together all the time, and we loved to punish each other, and I miss that. And then now he's gone, and I don't get to ever like share that with him again. And that just, it breaks my heart.
Yeah.
So,
and I think, just going back to that caring spirit of Mike, there was, we had done, if everybody remembers, the ride we did back in, I want to say it was February. It was one of the first rides we did as like a big team group and went out there and hammered. And it's like a group of 8 at the end. And of course, Mike's like tearing everybody's legs off at the end. And we tacked on a few miles at the end because he wanted to hit 100. And I was like, sure, just because I loved talking to Mike after rides. I just did. And we were riding back, and this was around the time when I was kind of formulating a plan with some friends of mine to open up a clinic here in the next couple of years. And we were hashing out a lot of those details. And I was kind of just talking to him about that, like what that means in the medical world, from his perspective. And he kind of told me something that, I'll share, and definitely something that I kind of latch on to advice from him on just being in the medical profession. He told me, as soon as it becomes only about the money, Evan, make sure that you don't treat anymore. And that was kind of big for me because I had gotten so in the woods with, and I know Lance, you're listening to this and probably agree and can relate to that advice, because I gotten so in the woods about talking about square footage prices and the price of a chiropractic table and what kettlebells cost. And I think he had kind of seen to me that was where my thought process was. And he still knew I was young as a physical therapist, and that I need to be more focused on actually caring for the people, which he did on a
patient care. Yeah.
And that's what he does on a daily basis, is treat people in the darkest times of their life. So,
I had a bit of a unique position where I was also involved with him professionally and not just cycling. He actually, my father-in-law came down with cancer about 1.5 years ago, that my father-in-law actually didn't survive his cancer. And during that process, Michael wasn't our assigned oncologist here in Vancouver, Washington. But when my father-in-law ended up in the hospital and we knew that it was kind of an end of life transition thing, I was able to get in touch with Michael. And from the moment that I got in touch with Michael, he dropped a lot of what he was doing and went straight to my father-in-law's room, introduced himself to my mother-in-law, my brother-in-laws, my wife. And from then on, he went and checked on them every single day. Just his caring, loving attitude. We were able to get a lot more personal information because I had a personal relationship with Michael, and he made that whole death process of my father-in-law just much more bearable and human. And that was, I'll forever be grateful for that. And that he helped my family out so much. And it wasn't just about tearing my legs off every weekend. It was also personally there. So I was happy that I was able to see him in his work life as well, and how he dealt with people and how he connected with people. So,
yeah. And I think if there's anything that people who knew him well on both sides of the cycling and professional side that can share with, his kids who maybe didn't get to see those two parts of him as well, is that their father was somebody who touched a lot of people. I think in the last couple of days, I've heard this already multiple times from people saying, oh, I only met Mike like once or twice, but it's such a sad event still because he was a big presence in just the community in this region, period. Cycling and everything else aside, just as a person, he was a big presence in this community.
Yeah. He had this innate characteristic about himself that was incredible to me, but he always knew when to reach out and touch base with you. It's like he just had this like sixth sense about him to know like what was going on in your life. And when you needed like a little pick me up, or you need a little bit of encouragement, or somebody just to check in on you, or a little bit of affirmation of like a hard job or hard work effort that you put in, he always would, like, either for me would show up in my house, like knock on the door, like, hey, get some time to talk, or he would shoot me a text, or give me a call, or there's like a little Strava notification, and it's just like, how do you know this, man? It's just like, and it wasn't just me, and it's like, don't think you're special, Jake. It was everybody, and so many people have come to me and said the same thing. It's like he just was always there for me. He was always caring, and then I start to ask myself a question. I'm like, man, am I just a jerk and I don't have that gene in me? Am I not reaching out to people enough? I'm like, all right, we're going to fall into this whole category now of, what would Michael do? And I know that sounds a little cliche and whatnot, but that's kind of been governing me since we knew that he was gone. Like the decisions that I'm making, I'm like, he's gone. Like, all right, what would Michael do if the roles were reversed? And I'm going to carry that with me for forever. I mean, the guy was such a positive influence on me and some of the other people. I want to be like Mike.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And I think, and we'll address this too, because I know Matt brought this up today, and I think I've heard a couple people the last couple of days bring this up, that after something like this, it is hard to get back on the bike, I think. And that's something we can definitely talk about. But at least when we went on our ride Saturday, we were, it was less than 48 hours after, and it was at that time, you're like, do you get on the bike? Do you not get on the bike? I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to that at all. But we had Dustin made a good point. He made a funny point there saying, I think Mike would be pissed at us if we didn't do interviews today.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that
was coming for me next.
Because we were like, well, we were supposed to do 4 hours today, and they were supposed to be hard efforts. Mike would be pissed if I didn't do that.
We'll get back to sharing a few stories about Michael here in just a second, but just for those of you listening along that maybe didn't know Mike or didn't know anything about the situation, knew Michael and still don't have all of the specific details, he was not hit by a car. It was just a super unfortunate bicycle accident, and we just don't have all the details as to exactly how it happened. We just know what happened. And it's at this point in time, it's nobody's fault. It's just one of those things that happened. We've all had like little spills and whatnot, and his just unfortunately was catastrophic. So any other?
Yeah. So losing control on a downhill, we think, and I mean, so to speak to, feeling confident going back out on the road, I think all of us are shaken. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And there's no right or wrong answer to when to or not to. It's just,
It's absolutely, I think, Evan, have kids and things like that. And it's, to know his kids are close to my age, it's so hard to go back out on the road when you relate to his family so much. And Jake, you probably feel the same way, where you're just like, oh my gosh, I relate to his family so tightly and just feel for his family so much. It's really distressing.
Yeah. It's, his wife is about the same age as my wife. His two of his kids are like the same age as two of my kids. And to watch what they're going through right now, just that utter like chasm, that void that's now left in their hearts, it breaks yours. It really does. And you want to do everything you can to help them, but it's never going to be enough. So it's just super sad. And it does make you question, like, is it worth it to go out and ride a bicycle?
Yeah, absolutely.
And, we're on a cycling podcast here, and we're questioning the thing that we love. And, we just talked last week, 101 benefits to cycling, or 101 things we love about cycling. It's just like, and we talk about that all the time.
Yeah. No, we all love cycling so much. And my big thing is, like, I love my family so much more, and there's things that I can do. I can go stay inside in Zwift, and this sounds horrible, but it's like, for a long time I was just thinking that he got hit by a car and the car ran off, and I just did not feel safe going out and biking. Yeah. And I still feel unsafe going out biking every day. Like Jake, had this horrific accident. Like, we all have been through a lot of near misses with cars and things like that. And I definitely am shaken up, and I am not feeling like I want to go, bike out by myself or.
I can kind of tell a story related to this with this week, because I had a bit of a unique experience. I mean, I was in Bend when this all happened. I'm off screwing around. I'm driving across the country, and I'm just cycling in different places and seeing cool stuff and visiting some friends and visiting some family. And I happened to be in Bend when this happened with Mike. And of course, like everybody else, I was just devastated. I laid in my hotel room that night and stared at the ceiling and cried a lot and questioned whether I should even get on a bike again after hearing this. And the next morning when I woke up, I actually didn't want to ride. And so I went for a hike instead. And I went for like a 7-mile hike, and it took me 2.5 hours or something like that. And I just ended that hike with more questions than answers, and decided, no, I need to get back on my bike.
Yeah.
I think Mike would want me to get back on my bike. And so I drove from Bend down to Crater Lake National Park.
Mm-hmm.
And Crater Lake National Park is a super popular, gorgeous spot in the Pacific Northwest. There is a 33-mile road that loops around Crater Lake. And people cycle it all the time, but it's usually very popular, and there's not much of a shoulder, and so cars are always an issue. But I knew at this time of year that most of the road is closed to cars because there's snow problems, because it's at like 7,000 or 8,000 feet in elevation.
Yeah, that's way up there.
But when I got there, I pulled into the park, and there, in a parking lot that usually has hundreds of cars, there were like 4 cars. There was nobody there. And I geared up, I got on my bike, I started riding around the rim, and for the next 33 miles and 4,000 feet of elevation gain, I didn't see a single car. I didn't see a single other person. I just had this whole beautiful national park all to myself. And I was riding at sunset there. It was one of the most beautiful things that I have witnessed, to be over Crater Lake with this beautiful thing. And the way that I was personally suffering, trying to deal with what this, losing Mike and what it meant to me and what it meant to my teammates and what it meant to his family. And it made me just have a lot of questions. But I think my Heavenly Father, and I don't want to get really religious here, but I knew my Heavenly Father knew that I was suffering, and knew that He wanted to comfort me and wanted to bring me some peace, that there will be some good that comes out of this, and we don't know what that good will be, whether and what that means or when that will actually happen. But He was bringing me, I felt strongly that giving me that opportunity to gather my thoughts and witness something so beautiful, and to be in a place that wasn't crowded and with other people, and I could just soak that all in. It was a pretty surreal and powerful moment for me to know that my Heavenly Father loves me, and He cares about me personally, and that there is a plan in place for all of us. And we just don't know what that plan is and how it works, even though we have lots of questions why. Mm-hmm. So
yeah,
that was kind of a powerful moment for me last week. And it helped me realize that, okay, yeah, being on a bike is an important part of my life. And I think it's helped other people, and I need to keep doing that. Mm-hmm. And I think Mike would want me to keep doing that. And so, not to say it's not hard or difficult, because just like what Matt said, it just makes you question whether I should get it back on my bike. But yeah, I did, and I'm glad I did.
No, I mean, we've all had those. I mean, it's just it's nice. I feel like that's such a nice experience for you to have after such a tragic experience. I'm really glad that you know that happened in your situation, and just felt helps you get some sort of, I don't know, not closure, but just some sort of feeling of like meaning. It's really nice that happened. I'm glad that situation happened for you. Yep. Yeah.
Man, it's just tough to talk about this.
Yeah.
I miss the guy. I want him to come back. He had so much positivity about him, so much to give back still, and so much like just vibrant life left in him. He had just started a new job he was super excited about, and he had this like killer like work schedule that he had set up that he was just beside himself with. He was going to be out working the Tri-Cities area in Kennewick, if I'm not mistaken. He had like a little work apartment out there, and he would drive out on, Sunday evening. He worked Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and he'd drive home, I think it was like Wednesday after work, and then it was a 3-hour commute. But then he had 4-day blocks, and he was beside himself, excited about the fact that he could, train and spend time with his wife and his boys, and just have these blocks of time that he hasn't had for eons. I mean, when he was here working in the Vancouver area, I mean, he was constantly on call, and he was constantly getting called in, and he was pretty high level within the oncology department there. I mean, I think he was the chief of staff, if I'm not mistaken, for the oncology department. It was Peace Health was their physician of the year a year or two ago. I mean, the guy was just like
big
super,
medical network,
exactly,
very big medical network,
and so beloved. And he'd just done his first week of working out there at the new job, and he got home and he was super excited. He's like, I got 4 days off, I'm gonna go ride my bike. And he had spent it was like a week or two prior, he'd spent like 4 days in San Diego at the wind tunnel doing wind tunnel testing.
Yes, I
it
remember
was
that
like
now.
a major bucket list thing for him.
Yeah.
I went down there and got to spend hours in there with his coach and with all the technicians, and they kind of redefined his position for him. He was like kind of blown away at the changes that they made, and they found something that was A, more comfortable, and B, it was faster for him. So he was super excited to get back to training, and this was his first ride back, and it was a beautiful day out. It was a beautiful day. It was like bright blue skies.
Good,
temperature wasn't too bad, and he's going to go out and ride my TT bike, and made it about a half mile from home. So
I have a funny story about Michael going to Tri-Cities. I last week on the podcast I talked about going to Pullman, Washington to for my daughter, and my wife and I actually stopped in the Tri-Cities for a night, and I went for a ride. And during that ride, Michael had texted me saying, hey, we're going to ride. He was inviting me to a group ride that weekend. And I said, hey, sorry, I can't. I'm in Kennewick. I'm in the Tri-Cities. And his first response was, don't you steal any of my KOMs.
Yeah, they were out doing, I think, the Crown Point ride that day, Lance, wasn't it? They were on over the Oregon side. Yeah. That's, and I mean, it's with that story about him going to that San Diego wind tunnel too. He was, I mean, absolutely putting himself into position this season to be somebody who could put down probably a competitive time at national TT. Like, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not talking about somebody who's regionally fast here. Like, Mike was a nationally fast time trialist. And
that road racing, too. I mean, he had it within him. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just think back to, like, the first ride that I ever did with him. And it's like one of those things where, I don't know if I told the story already, but maybe I'm talking to you guys earlier. But I was working, I hadn't lived here in Camas for too long. And I still didn't know too many people. I maybe met Matt just a couple months prior, but my cycling network wasn't vast by any means at all. I had a handful of people, and so a lot of the rides I was doing was by myself. And one day I'm out tinkering on my bike in the garage, and it was a January day. It was cold, but it was nice out. And I'm like, I got to get some sunshine. So I opened up the garage door when I'm working on my bike, and his wife came walking up the street, and she was across the street, and she looked over, and knowing her husband and the cycling nut that he was, she just waved to me like, hey, how are you doing? I'm like, oh, hi, nice to see you. Nothing beyond that. And then fast forward like a couple days later, I get this ping on Strava from this guy named Michael Myers. I'm like, well, that's a peculiar name.
Yeah. Do you remember on his Strava? I don't think it was this way after a while, but when I first met him on his Strava, it was like, not that Michael Myers.
Yeah.
It was like such a funny thing.
Yeah.
Like,
so I'm like, Dr. Evil's like reaching out to go for a ride with me here. So anyhow, I get this ping, and it's like, hey, I see that you live in Camas and you ride a lot. He's like, I looked your stuff on Strava. You want to go for a ride sometime? And that's just
cool.
goes back to that thing. Oh, you ride bikes? I ride bikes too.
Exactly.
Like,
we're best friends.
We're best friends. So it was that meme right there. So
yeah.
We connected and we went out on a ride, and I'm like, all right, well, who's this guy? I don't know anything about him. And more times than not, somebody says they want to go for a ride, you're usually waiting for them because they're not of the same caliber of rider you are.
Yeah.
We went out on a ride, and holy crap, did we tear each other's legs off. It was just like awesome. This massive beat down. I'm like, dude.
We are now best friends.
We're not just friends, we're best
We're
friends.
best friends now. Full on bromance right there. And I had so many just insane rides. And like I mentioned before, when you go on rides with Mike, typically there's not like a whole lot of chit chatting going on.
I know.
They're not social
I love
rides.
that though.
But yes, it's exactly. It was what I thrived on. I'm like, this guy is like me, you know. So it's just going out on these rides, and I can remember like he hated being cold and he hated being wet, like to a degree. It was just insane. Like it could be 50 degrees out and sunny, and Mike shows up looking like the little Malto-Meal kid, or like Ralphie's little brother in a Christmas Story. Like, hey guys, wait for me.
Always had twice as much clothes on.
Literally 2 weeks ago. So it was like one of the sunniest Saturdays. It was either 2 or 3 weeks ago. We do the Lucia Fall Rise, and like it was like 68 degrees by middle part of this ride.
Yeah.
Me and Dustin have everything off. Like I am in we are in summer kits.
Yeah.
He is still in his winter gloves, the dialed cap, full arm, like just his entire body is covered.
Yeah. And, I mean, he just hated being cold. So just going out on rides, it was just kind of funny watching his like teeth start to chatter. And that was another catalyst for him. It's like, hey, we got to pick up the pace. I'm cold. Like, pick up the pace. What are you talking about?
Maybe that's
man?
why
Like,
all of his rides are tempo. Is because he's like, I got to keep my legs warm.
So that was always fun comedy with him, and just spending time with him on the car rides to and from races. I won't trade that for anything in the world. And it was always fun when there was more than just the two of us, but I really cherished the time where it was just myself and Michael, and we're driving to a race, talking about race strategy, and then getting to life and getting to know him better, and then finishing with a race and coming home and just talking about how great it was and sharing in all the great little victories that we had, and again, getting to know him even better. I mean, I was super fortunate for those, and I'll never forget them.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's another time too that I'm super thankful that the bike accident crashed when I got hit by a car. He like literally dropped everything. He was in the hospital visiting me. He was coming in to check up on me. He's in constant communication with my wife. What can I do to help? And he, again, just had that uncanny knack of like knowing how to connect, and it was just great. And then when I had to go back into the hospital for the second time, I mean, it was the post-concussive syndrome, and I'd thrown up 8 times between 2 o'clock and 8 o'clock in the morning. It was just constant and broken ribs and migraines, and just I was done. So he checks in on me that morning, and my wife tells him what's going on. He literally gave us like a Michael escort to the hospital. The hospital where he worked, and circumvented everything. And I was back in like an ER room being treated like almost immediately. And he's calling people, he's getting on the phone, he's directing traffic, and he made sure that I had like the best care immediately. We've all been probably to an emergency room at one point in time. Usually it's like you got to sit there for
Bike
quite
crash, you're
some
back in the line.
time. And man, he has a busy schedule. He's got crazy stuff going on in his life. He's training. He's got his family. He sat there with us all day long. I got there from 9 o'clock in the morning, and he stayed there until I think it was like 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon when they finally admitted me to the hospital, and I got stabilized, and I was in my room and I was resting. My wife had everything kind of taken care of. That's when he finally left. He had so many other things to do in his life, and he just dropped everything, and he spent the day with me. And I was like half in and out of it because of the pain meds that they were putting me on. So, I mean, half the time I was asleep, but you know what? He still stayed there, and he kept my wife company, and, just doing the different little things that he could do while he was sitting there, but he never left. And that's just the kind of human being that he was. And I can't thank him enough for not just doing that, but for teaching me some life lessons of like, this is how you treat people. And, that lack of a-hurry. I mean, he was
God, he was the definition.
He was the definition. So be like Mike. Really.
When I had my back injury a year ago, I had seen my my orthopedic surgeon, and they wanted me to get an MRI. So I went to make an appointment to get an MRI, and it was scheduled like 5 days out or something like that. And my orthopedic surgeon, somehow Michael found out that I needed an MRI, and he called me personally and said, I hear you're having back trouble, and you need an MRI. I said, yeah, and I can't get scheduled for like 5 days. He said, be here at the hospital in an hour and I'll take care of it.
Man,
I went,
that's so
what?
Unheard of in the medical field too. That's like, that's one of a kind, right?
How do you do that? He's like, just get down here and I'll take care of it. And sure enough, I had an MRI within an hour.
Yeah.
So,
and I think that I was just thinking about this, and Jake, it's interesting that you tell that story after your crash with how concerned he was for you and everything, and even after my crush, which was 1% of what Jake's was, I was I had a minor concussion at that time, and Mike was texting me each day, telling me like, how's your screen time? You still getting migraines? Like every single day texting me, and he kept on telling me, he's like, if this is in 1 week, you're coming in, and we're getting you in to see somebody. But I think the thing that was so wild to me is that, when Mike would crash or get injured, it's almost like he never thought of himself in any way. He would, the guy ignored punctured lungs for like his pain, his discomfort tolerance for what he was going through was so high. It's like the guy was only concerned with the discomfort of people around him and just couldn't even process his own pain, would never acknowledge. And like we all talked, like there was, I forget what ride it was. He had crashed like the day before. And by the end of the ride, we kind of looked down at his hip. He had had some road rash. He was like bleeding through his kit.
Yeah.
And he just realized, I was like, oh, I think I just got to get a new bib. We're like, what happened? He's like, oh, I crashed yesterday. Like he hadn't even not even had mentioned it until somebody was like, you're bleeding through your kit right now. And
that is one thing that he did do well.
He did, yes.
He's had his fair share of go-downs.
He ignored crashes pretty well, yeah.
And it's just, you want to think that it's one of those things, and he's just doing another one of his little stints in the hospital, and he's going to get released, and he's going to come back and say, this and this happened.
Yeah. He just brushed it off. Yeah, he just brushed it off like nothing was wrong. And
it's just so unfortunate. It really is. Lance, do you have any other stories to share about Michael?
Just that my favorite ride I ever did with him was when it was just the two of us. He was in between transitioning to this job out in Tri-Cities, and I had recently stopped working, and so it was like a random Tuesday, and he says, hey, let's go ride, and I'm like, sure. And so just the two of us got together, and of course it ended up being like 85 miles, and and for this whole like 4-hour session, it was me seriously trying to hold on to his wheel for 85 miles. And I'm like, okay, is this what retirement is going to be like for me? Because this is going to destroy me. But it was just a great day that we were able to spend together. And so anyway, that's all.
Yeah. Those are some great stories, you guys, and thank you for sharing. And I'm sure that as time goes on, we'll have a bunch more that will come to mind, and we'll share them over the course of time. Just real quick, let's just run through our normal backpedal real quick and just let folks kind of know what's going on with us, and then we do have one more segment after that. So, Lance, what's going on? What you been up to this last week?
Well, after the Crater Lake ride, I actually headed to Lake Tahoe, and I had this like spiritual experience riding at Crater Lake, and I'm driving to Vegas because I was meeting a couple friends here in Vegas for a couple days, and decided, hey, I'm going to detour to Lake Tahoe because I wanted to ride the Flume Trail, which is kind of a world famous mountain bike trail overlooking Lake Tahoe. And, I get here, it was a Saturday, and it was like the opposite experience of Crater Lake, where it was a zoo.
The trail looks sandy. Is it sandy up there?
Yeah, there is sandy sections. It definitely made you want to stay in the trail and not get off into the soft stuff. But I rode this Flume Trail, and this other section I did like a 25-mile loop that I actually had to get a shuttle to get to the top of the loop where it would actually kind of work. But that Flume Trail was worth the zoo. So many people, but just completely gorgeous, overlooking Lake Tahoe. So that was the other cool thing I did, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. When are you going to be back in town, Lance?
I don't know.
Living the dream.
He's running away from home.
First world problems. Those aren't even first world problems. Those are first Lance problems.
I know. I'm gonna ride today here in Vegas with a couple of friends, and then I think I'm gonna spend a day in St. George doing some more riding, and then I'll meet up with my kids in Salt Lake area, and then I'm going to drive back on Friday because I want to be here I want to be back in Vancouver for Michael's celebration of life, which will be on Saturday the 17th. So I'll be back for that.
Good. All right. How about you, Evan?
This last week was, just another kind of busy work week with some good training tossed in there. Been swimming a lot lately.
Okay.
Me and Matt are probably going to grab a swim together after this.
Hopefully.
We still on for that?
Yeah.
Okay, good. But yeah, just plugging along. Saturday did a really, we got lucky with just a beautiful day Saturday by the afternoon. It was cold, which for me, I feel bad even saying cold because I spent so many years riding in Ohio, and that's like real cold. Like Ohio, Michigan's like you're going out in like 10-degree weather. Yeah. There's always the chance of snow. Like it was like 38 degrees when we started the ride on Saturday, and I was like, this is too cold. And I could feel myself just getting softer. I'm like, oh, come on, man, harden up. Like it's 30, it's almost 40 degrees. But it was wild because we did the Bridge of the Gods ride, and it was like dead wind the entire time, which was so, if you look outside today, it's like trees are blowing over. Yeah. So it was weird that Saturday there was just no wind the entire ride, but made for a great ride along there. So the views are great. The sun came out. It was just a good day. And it wasn't, it's probably gotten to the 46, 47 range, which is completely fine. So I just need to get better at riding in cold again. Yeah.
How about you, Matt? Did you survive the whole swooshy thing going on last week?
Last week I was not on the podcast. Okay, so first of all, I went to the state meet with my high school kiddos. And so that was like overnight trip, a lot of work that was like Friday, Saturday. High school kids, girls got third, which was excellent for them. Guys got third also, which was not as good.
Has that ever happened before that your guys and girls team got the same place at state?
No, not since I've been around.
Okay.
So not in the past 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
Our guys were strong enough that they potentially could have won the whole thing. So, they were 7 points from winning. So, they were fine. It's just not, and it's just like.
In the cross country world, 7 points is not a lot
much,
of points.
Not much. I'm
so
not
the top three teams were all within 7 points of each other? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think we had the team that won, we had beat the week before. So it's okay.
Oh.
Yeah, it's okay.
Who won?
Tahoma.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And great. I love that team. They're super nice, great coaches, good people. So I'm happy that they won. And I told them after, I was like, I'm kind of glad you guys won. Other than us, I want us to win, but that's a good group of people for sure. So that's good. And so that was great. Came back late on Saturday night. Like we always get back late, and you have to put away all the team stuff, so you're getting home super late at night, and then turned around the next morning. I did catch like one kid's soccer game or something like that, and then off to Beaverton, Nike, which is just it's close to where we live. It's just on the other side of Portland, and started Sunday night.
Phil Knight's Kingdom.
Yes, we worked every night till like 1 a.m. So wake up and try to get to the campus, Nike campus, before traffic, and then just work all the way until they kicked us out of there. So in one way, that's good because you get a lot. I get paid more the more I work, so that is good. The problem with it is like there's no time to train. Like you can barely
zero time.
You can barely stay awake.
Yeah.
So my backpedal, I'm working really well towards. Getting in that Clydesdale division.
Do they have a Clydesdale?
No. What was your
for
triathlon?
Ironman?
Ironman,
they do.
I don't know if they
do.
I bet you they do.
Ironman, do they?
I don't know, but they have it on almost all
USAT has that division.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. So
I don't have any power to back it up.
You would dominate that division.
No, I wouldn't because I don't have the power. I don't have any power to back up the Clydesdale. So there's that. Some positive takeaways from sure.
Were you a big coffee guy during this, or
how do you? So I've been trying. I don't know if I've talked about this on the podcast, but like I've been trying to go basically decaf. So I've been decaf for a couple months, like doing fine with decaf. I love it. But I did switch back onto some caffeine. So then you actually have, and for any of you guys that race or whatever, this is one of, a very small tip is what you can do is you can go decaf, or you can go, no coffee for a while prior to your race, a month or something like that. And then you may have some like withdrawal symptoms. But then, the day of your race or whatever, your caffeine is going to be, it's going to take a little bit stronger effect on your system.
I always try to take a week off caffeine before a big race. And when you wake up and drink that it's like,
you're like, ooh, wow,
you
this
are
is
amped,
functional.
ready to go.
It's not like your normal cup of coffee.
This is what caffeine's supposed to do.
It's what it's supposed to do, right? So, but I was still like falling asleep while I was working. It was hard. But that made it through that, survived.
Do you get some time off work now?
Yeah, not really. I have another project, but it's nothing like that. I mean, every day was at least 14 hours. So, it's just unfortunate to basically, not have a week of working out. I'm going to swim with you today, and I'm like, hope I can swim. Hope I remember how. So
don't worry, you're not going to be getting much out of me today, so we'll be fine.
Good. Yep.
All right.
You guys, wait. I'm being interrupted by my two buddies. You've heard me talk about Ryan Lee on the podcast. Say hi, Ryan. Can you yell?
Hello, interweb.
Nice. Ryan, I'm your biggest fan.
I'm also here with Steve Waldrop as well.
Oh, is this the world famous politician?
To do for mid-afternoon nutrition.
Oh,
oh my gosh, that's awesome.
You got some bacon. It's your choice.
Oh, yeah. We need to do some nutrition, apparently.
Yeah.
So
the Boulder, they give you bacon in the middle of it. I asked for it in the middle of a 5K once, and that was unpleasant for about 1 day as a 10K.
Is that with or without sponge, Steve?
Without those prior to sponging.
God, Lance, they're a lot funnier than you. Can we just have Ryan and Steve just on the podcast from now on?
All right, guys. Good to see you.
Yeah. My back pedal was, again, more of the same.
Nice.
Yeah.
Can you give us more details, like hours?
There's little improvements going on here. There's little victories.
A little bit. I mean, I did go to the doctor last week, and I got this cortisone shot right in the middle of my shoulder. That needle, my God, was ginormous. That thing was like, just like 4 or 5 inches long. And I saw it. My eyes got like the size of like silver dollars. And the doctor's like, "Oh, it's okay. Just relax. You won't feel too much." I'm like, "Yeah,
relax."
Jesus says the guy holding this massive like.
I'm about to stab you. Just relax.
How many hours did you put on the trainer?
Things were going towards 9, and then we got Michael's news.
Yeah,
and I had no motivation to ride on Thursday and Friday, and then Saturday and Sunday I was just like, I was flat. Lack of sleep, and gutted, and so I ended up, I think, just getting like 4.5 hours, and I was probably kind of due
for a down week,
for a rest week anyway. So I'm just going to chalk it up to that and try and get back after it again this week. So
I know that you're coming back from an injury, but like kind of my secret goal is to kind of like start to do some of the similar hours on the trainer as you, because I think. I'm kind of starting from scratch as well. Obviously, last week I put in 0, but I think
this is not a bad.
Work out well.
This is even earlier than most of your pros are starting their off-season training. So don't worry.
Yeah,
it's time to build.
It works really well. It's just boring as hell. It's. I mean, you can still kind of find some fun in it, and you can connect with friends, and you can do our group rides that we're doing on there. You can watch TV shows, but still, you're not outside riding. And it's almost like I'm forgetting what it's like to ride outside because it's been so long. So this has become my norm, which in a weird way kind of helps a little bit. So it's like, all right, I got to go ride the trainer, and today I got to be on there for an hour and a half or 2 hours or an hour and 15 minutes, and it's getting easier, and it doesn't hurt as bad to sit on there for as long as my body's becoming acclimated. But the nice byproduct is that my FTP is rising quite nicely, and I'm following my programs, and I'm constantly bumping it up, and I'm probably about ready to jump it up again, or even actually take a formal test to kind of find out where it's at. I've been kind of just like guesstimating where it's at and making adjustments accordingly.
Are you following just a Zwift program, or are you writing something personal?
I am following their 10 to 12 week FTP builder, and I kind of go in there and tweak it a little bit, just in terms of like some of like the intensity of the segments, or the not segments, but the interval efforts. I'll sometimes adjust them up or down just based on how I'm feeling. But it's looking at it, it's got a pretty solid premise behind building your FTP, and it's working for me. So,
well, anything would work for you, to be honest. I'm not, I'm not making fun of Zwift. Obviously, I think if you listen to this podcast, you know that like, we really do like Zwift on this podcast.
Yeah.
But,
So, and I'm incorporating, it's basically a 5-day-a-week program, and I'm usually adding in one more day a week with the group ride or the team ride on there, and, sometimes an active recovery in there that's not prescribed, but it's working well.
When is your 12 or 10 or 12 weeks up?
I am,
this past 5 weeks into it now?
This past week would have been the finish or the culmination of, is it week 7 or 8?
Oh, okay. You're a little bit further along than I thought. Yeah.
It's right in there. So I've probably got about, say, anywhere from like 3 to 5 weeks left of this 10 to 12 week builder.
You're well up in February. Yeah.
So, and then the doctor has me doing like little sets of actually getting my arms out to the hoods. And before the actual cortisone shot that I got, it was like I could barely get my hand almost there, and now I can get my hand to the hood. And basically the two things of the cortisone shot and then having Evan torture the crap out of me,
crank on it for a little bit,
has actually helped me quite a bit. And even so much that I went ahead and hooked up the Wahoo Climb that I have on there to start kind of.
That was
playing
the
with
first thing I noticed when I came in today, is that thing's centered now.
Yeah. So the bars aren't turned, and I'm trying to spend a little bit of time on there, and that's what the doctor wanted me to do. So building up my tolerance to that, and I'm hopeful that I can. In the next couple of weeks, be able to do a full session
big improvements in a week and two. Considering how long this progression has been, I mean, huge improvements in the last 10 days.
And the funniest part of last week, not that last week was great by any means at all, but there was one little shining funny spot. So I went in to see the doctor, and he has this physician's assistant who's actually been working with me through this whole process, and she's awesome. She came in and she was doing all the measurements, and she's checking out everything, and she's like, all right, do this, that, and the other, and she's like, oh, I can feel it. It's finally moving. And I'm like, oh, gee, thanks, and she's like, your shoulder doesn't look like is it emaciated as it normally does? Like, it's kind of filling out a little bit, and then she's like moving all around. She just looks me dead in the eye. She's like, your shoulder sucks. Just straight up, like, your shoulder sucks. I just started laughing.
He can hear you,
And I'm like, you're 100% right. It totally sucks. And she's like, okay, we're going to get you taken care of, though. She's like, I think we need to do a cortisone shot, and the doctor will come in and chat with you more about that. So that was like the one little part this week that made me laugh. Appreciate that. So other than that, it was just soccer, and soccer's finally done. Like, no more soccer. My daughter's soccer tournament wrapped up, and they finished, I think, like 4th or something like that in there, so maybe even 3rd. Girls played great, and now the only commitment that I have to kids sports right now is taking the kids to Sunday swim at 11 o'clock. So
there you go.
Yeah. And then other than that, it's just been kind of trying to wrap my head around life right now, and soaking it all in. Like everybody else. I mean, we're not the only ones that are hurting from this whole thing. There's a lot of people out there, and there's a lot of outrage and a lot of sad folks. So we'll get through this hopefully, and
Saturday will be nice for everybody to get together and be able to talk about Mike. Yeah.
Okay, our topic today, it's going to be discussing something that, while in the moment, we were all like beating our heads against the wall and scratching our heads like, why doesn't he have this set up? And basically that's real-time activity tracking. And there's a couple different things that you can use. Now, hindsight being 2020, looking back, this wouldn't have changed anything. But while we were in the moment, basically I got a call from his wife at 4:00 in the afternoon. And I was just getting ready to work with a client, and I'm like, oh gosh, and then I reached out to Sean Martin to ask him if he helped. But long story short, she's like, he was supposed to be home at 2:30. It's 4:00. Do you happen to know who he was riding with, just so we can check in with him? She's like, I'm going to kick his butt again because he knows that like little things like this happen, drive me nuts. And so we're trying to figure this stuff out, and Sean puts out like a notification on our team's Facebook page, and then all of a sudden we've got all kinds of people asking questions, or have you tried here? And the people start researching his Strava page and finding out what places that he likes to do his riding, and we finally figured out what bike he was on. But all the while we're like, well, to his wife, can you just like do the Find My Friends? Because for me, it's like my wife and I, we use that thing all the time, so we know where each other are at. And just pull it up and it GPS locates your phone. She's like, oh yeah, we never set that up. I'm like, well, how about the Garmin Live Track? Do you guys use that? Well, he has it, but he doesn't use it. I'm like, well, Strava Beacon? And she's like, no. And like, he had all of the best technology, but he didn't employ it. And that was just kind of one of those things. Like, he wanted the best and he had the best, and he just didn't always take the time to learn how to use certain parts of it. Like, the guy knows his way around a power meter and a training program like nobody's business, but there's certain little bits of technology. It's like, why didn't you use this? And while we were in the moment, we all thought that he got hit by a car and that he was in a ditch somewhere, and that we need to go find him. We need to save his life. Why aren't you using these things? So,
and you actually drove around, right?
I spent about 2 hours in the car driving around all the places where
you were
would
out
go.
there all evening. I mean, that was
I finished up with my client at like 4:30 or 4:45, and I drove around from basically then, and I didn't get home until after 7 o'clock. And had to bring my daughter, because my daughter was with me because the kids didn't have school last week, and she's hungry and falling asleep in the back of the car. I'm like, but she was being a super helpful little helper with me. But finally had to bring her back. And at this point in time, it's like after 7:30, and I've got people calling me and texting me. In that 24-hour time period, I'm not just saying this. I don't think I've ever had more communications via text and email and messenger and just smoke signals, the whole bit. Just like, it was just blowing up nonstop. And so I'm sitting there and I want to go back out and help, but I'm just getting so many messages from all these different people, and we're trying to like play air traffic control to where to send people, and we had different ideas of where he might be.
I mean, there was a big span of where the search was.
And finally, the police were able to work with Verizon to kind of get an idea of triangulate where his phone might be. But because they didn't have access to the GPS, and because they weren't able to use the tracking systems, they weren't able to find out exactly where he was at. But they gave us basically about a 1 mile radius of where his phone was pinging. So we basically dropped a pin on there, put it up on our social media, and like immediately everybody's like, I'm out, I'm leaving right now, I'm heading over there. There was like people driving all over the place, and people that were out there were like floored at how many people were looking for Michael. I mean, one of our teammates was going to drive up from Newburgh. That's an hour away. He wanted to be a part of that helping process. I mean, that's a phenomenal community, but we were all out there trying to do this stuff, and it's just like, if he had just used one of those things, we could have found him and saved a lot of grief. But thinking about the takeaways from this, again, there's nothing we could have done to change that. If he did use those things, it wasn't going to change anything. But just for our future safety, like, let's be more connected, people. Let's not be so like, oh, I'm scared to share my location, or it's technology, and that's hard for me. I will take the time to sit down with you and teach you the very basic steps. I mean, my wife even is like nervous about this, and she's an avid runner, and now I get a text message from her devices that says, all right, she's on a run, and I'm using the Garmin Live Track. And what's beautiful about that is I can actually pull it up, and it's live. It will show me exactly where she's at, what kind of pace she's running at, and it's just, you know what's going on. So Matt, why don't you talk to us a little bit more about like maybe some of the different services out there? You're a very techie guy, and Mr. App Developer. I mean, which ones would you recommend?
Well, if I think the one that Jake, you kind of mentioned a lot of them. There's so many good options for sure. The one that I use the most is Find My Friends. With my wife and I, we always share our location constantly. And with that application, you do have the option, if you are a little bit scared of privacy, you can share your location for an hour, you can share your location for 24 hours, or you can share your location indefinitely. I think probably it's best to just go ahead and share indefinitely, because again, if
you forget, that's the thing.
You're on someone's list. They probably don't care that much of like where you are, unless they're trying to meet you up for a bike ride, or if it happens to be your spouse and they're stalking you. But my wife and I joke all the time about like the fact that like I was stalking you, that means like I was looking to see where you were, if I'm on any sort of trip or whatever it is. And she can kind of, usually without having to ask me or whatever it is, she can kind of see like, okay, I'm traveling back from the high school state meet, and I'm here and here and here. And then she starts to think, okay, well, he'll probably be home around midnight or whatever it is. So she can kind of get an idea, just tracking that way. But any of you guys that cycle, which I assume if you're listening to this podcast, that is a lot of you, take the time to put these applications on your phone. There are Android, counterparts to this. I think Find My Friends is also on Android.
It is, yeah.
And
it's the Life 360 app on Android.
And it's just not super difficult. Again, like for this, it's like great because you can set it and forget it, right?
Yeah.
And then if you're meeting up with someone new, right? Like Nathan, we talked about him on this podcast a few times or whatever. It's like, he's going to be biking this way and I might run into him or I might not. And I'll send him a little, like, here's my location and share it for, a day or something like that. And so he can see,
that's how we met up with you on that ride. Yeah.
Yeah. If he takes a left turn and whatever it is, then we can ride together for a little bit, even if it's for a little bit, it's great. So there's some serious positives to that for sure. The other thing that my wife and I try to do is say, like, here's where I'm going to ride today. If I'm heading out, which is kind of hard to do because sometimes I'll go ride and she'll be at work or whatever it is. But we'll just say, like, here's roughly the route that I'll do. And the good thing about that is, if there's something that happens to me, like, she'll probably call Jake or she'll call Evan or whatever. And if they say, oh, he's going to go ride Prune Hill, where I'm going to go. Like, the normal routes. Or if I tell my wife I'm going to go ride Vancouver Lake, my wife might not know those routes, but she knows the people that know those routes.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
But yeah, the apps are great too, because again, so Garmin Live Tracker is great if you can get more stats that way. You can get kind of real-time updates. Jake mentioned this earlier. He said, I can see what pace she's running. So that's super cool. For my bang for the buck, you do have to kind of remember to start your Garmin Live Tracker. So for my bang for the buck, I think, using something like Find My Friend is slightly better just because you don't ever have to think about it. You just start and you go.
And this entire thing was a tragic, sad, but wake up call for me, because anybody listening to this podcast enough knows that I am technologically not gifted by any means. So for me, it was, I just downloaded the Find My Friends thing right here, and it's going to be something that I turn on each time I go on a ride now. So especially for me being somebody who, my situation's different than, Mike, Lance, Matt, or Jake's, is that if I'm gone for a while, my girlfriend Cassie may at some point be like, I know he was out on a ride today, but it could be a long time before somebody notices that I'm gone. So that's,
Yeah. And, I went on all these long runs growing up or whatever it is, and you would just be gone.
Yeah.
Just gone.
I remember training in Ada, Ohio. There's parts of Ada, Ohio where I'd be on a 2-hour ride and not see a car.
Yeah.
So and that was when I had a flip phone. So
yeah. Well, one thing, I want to talk to Lance about is maybe considering like a small satellite device. They have these very small devices and I think you can pay like monthly or yearly for them, and you can just kind of be like, if there's an emergency, you hit this satellite phone. Lance does a lot of these rides where he's on gravel roads and he doesn't see anyone for a long time.
Out in the middle of nowhere. Vegas,
and that's the one spot where maybe some of these apps would fail, is if there's no cell phone coverage.
If there's no coverage, usually like with Find My Friends and Find My iPhone, it's GPS, which has a lot better connectivity than your cell service.
The Life 360 one is GPS. So,
Right. All of those are using GPS, and it's sending that GPS data over cellular. So it's got to broadcast, because GPS GPS is kind of one directional, right? Like you can locate yourself very, very specifically. But it's one directional. You're locating yourself, not other people locating you. So to send that data of where you are, it's sent over cellular. So the one thing, you'll see is like your GPS can continue to work, and you can kind of locate yourself even when your cellular signal, doesn't exist. If they have the map, if you have the map data, which can be pre-downloaded to your phone, which is cool, right? So you might even be able to be like, you might be able to see your dot moving and stuff like that on your phone, and the map data itself, the tiling of the maps aren't getting updated because you don't have any cellular data. So
right. I have found that on several rides, especially in these mountain bike rides where I get into areas where there's no coverage.
Right.
But I had pre-downloaded a map, and I can see my dot on a map. So I actually go the right direction.
Yeah. So Lance, would you consider something like that, like a satellite device for, like emergency situations where?
If it was small enough, then I think I would.
They're small. They're kind of cell phone size ish.
I've just been in so many situations where I make a spur of the moment decision.
Yep.
Like Lake Tahoe yesterday, or the day Saturday, was a perfect example. I was not planning on going to Lake Tahoe. Right. It was like, hey, Lake Tahoe is 45-minute out of the way. I'm going to go ride the Flume Trail. And on my way there, I'm like texting my wife, which I would never do in a situation like this.
Yep.
I wouldn't text her and say, hey, by the way,
This is where I am.
I'm taking a side trip to Lake Tahoe and I'm going to ride the Flume Trail. But man, after Mike, I did that like every 4 hours with Brandy. I'm supposed to be on this ride for about 3 hours, and then I'm going to be driving to Vegas from there. Because I was freaked out, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe a satellite device like that could be beneficial if you know you're going to be riding in an area where
For mountain bikers,
cell
that
service
seems to
could
be very, very valuable.
be spotty.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does Garmin sell something like that? I feel like they do. It's something we can look up.
I believe they do. They have a little handheld device for Garmin GPS stuff. So
Well, I know they do that for hikers. You can take an emergency beacon with you for hikers.
So, and I know on the Ride Across America rides, it's a requirement.
It is
to have the little satellite beacon device.
Yep.
So
that's how they actually do the
tracking,
the race tracking. Yeah.
And there's a number of different companies that sell those devices, but I do think Garmin is one of them.
Gotcha.
So,
I just had to sneak out because my coffee lease was up, and I came back in. So I'm not quite sure if you guys discussed this part. Did you get into the crash detection that's built into the Garmin software for a lot of the Edge units?
No, we haven't talked about that.
So that's another one that's kind of got a neat feature. It's a neat feature that's built into a lot of the units. So if you're cruising along and then all of a sudden you become stationary, or I think even go down.
It does like an impact detection, right?
Exactly. So
in there.
You can set it up and you can predefine who the Garmin is going to contact, but it will basically send a message to your phone through Garmin Connect, if I'm not mistaken, and then whoever person is that you have set up on the other end will get a notification that you have stopped, and you can kind of figure out what's going on from there.
And so, and the way that one works too is like your phone will get that message and it will send it along. And you have a certain amount of time. I don't remember exactly how much time it is, 5 or 10 seconds, so you can cancel the message. Yeah. So, if you're fine or whatever it is, right? Like if you drop your head unit and it thinks that was a crash or whatever, you're going to get the message through your phone. It's going to be buzzing. And then so you can cancel it before it scares your wife half to death. So those are great tools for sure.
Yeah, I think that's just another thing. I mean, we've got all this great technology. We just need to use it. Yeah. Because you never know when something's going to go sideways. Like every ride, you're going to go out and you're like, I'm going for a ride. I'm going to go out and do my thing, and I'm going to come back and get back to my day. You never know when it's going to happen. You know, it's like when I had my incident, my little crash, my wife had no idea. I was supposed to be home at about 8:15, and like it's like after 9 o'clock. Granted, that time of year it's still sunny out, and she's like, "Well, that's kind of his MO." He says he's gonna be home, in 2 hours, and it's always like 2.5 or 3 hours sometimes. And usually I'll try and contact her and let her know that we're running a little late, but she had no idea. Her first contact was the hospital calling her to let her know that I was in the hospital. So, had I had that, I didn't have that crash detection thing set up. But if I did, she would have got a message, and she would know that something happened, and she could have been more on top of me and what I had going on.
So for her, I'm guessing that she has find a friend on her. You guys are connected.
Yeah, we are connected. Yeah. So
I'm sure you're not always looking at it, right? So it's just like she wasn't worried. If she was worried about you, she would just stalk you.
She was starting to get to that point. I mean, she was putting the kids to bed, and the kids were like, "Where's Dad?" And she's like, "Oh, he's still not back from his ride. He should be back pretty soon." Yep. But
And then, did you lose your phone in the crash? I can't remember.
I did. Yeah. Okay. It flew out, and it got kind of broken pretty good.
So if she was looking for you, she would have looked in the wrong spot or something.
She would have found me in the bushes in Washougal. But it's there's still other technologies out there where she can actually like track all my stuff. And had I been using everything, had I been using the Garmin live track, like she would have found my bike at the police department because they had taken it to the police department. She would have found my phone in the bushes. She wouldn't have actually found me, but she could have
all the tracking advice.
But I'm sure if she sees that my bike's at the Camas Police Department, she could call down there and say, "Hey, what's going on?" And then they can tell her what's up. But she could have like truncated that whole process quite a bit to figure out where I was at, what was going on with me. So, technology folks, use it. Please. It's all there for us to help each other out and don't be bashful about connecting with your friends and letting them know where your location's at, or setting up your device to make sure that you send out a message to somebody that can keep tabs on where you're at, so that we can help you out.
Mm-hmm.
Don't want you to go down.
I think it's important for our listeners to know. I mean, the reason this all came up is because we had like a 5-hour time frame where most of the team was in panic looking for
Yeah.
Michael, and we had no idea where he was or how to find him. And if one of these things had been activated, we would have found him within minutes.
Yep.
And so that's why the importance of this stuff kind of all of a sudden became paramount.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's just another takeaway from what has transpired.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, I think that we covered all that quite well. If you guys have any questions about how to use any of that stuff, by all means, reach out. Just ping us on Facebook, and heck, just name and phone number. I'll pick up the phone and give you a call, or somebody will give you a call, and we'll make sure that you know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let's get into one last thing here and wrap this thing up. Evan, one last thing from you.
I think the one last thing that I just want to say with this whole situation, I'm sure it's what we're all thinking, what we all want to say, is just, I hope that, I know his kids are young right now, but I hope that his kids can take some peace from this situation and realizing that, their father was a 51-year-old man who lived a very complete and incredible life in 51 years. There's a lot of people who live 51 years and don't do 2% of the stuff that Mike Myers did.
Yeah.
And I hope that they can take from that their father's an inspiration to a lot of people, and that they can take solace in that and know that maybe, one day they don't need to be afraid to get on a bike, that their father loved cycling, and that their father loved working long hours too and helping people. And hopefully they can take some of those qualities from their dad and really employ them in their own life through this tragedy. And, I can't imagine, I think none of us can imagine what they're going through, but just knowing that their father wasn't just some guy. This was, he was a stalwart in this community, and he was something really special. So I just want his kids to know that. So.
Gotcha. Matt, one last thing.
Yeah, definitely at a loss for words for sure. We weren't sure if we should do a podcast, and I am glad that we did a podcast. I really wanted to talk about some of the concerns I have. I wanted to hear what you guys had to say. I wanted to just, absolutely share stories about Michael. I think it's therapeutic for all of us. And I hope any of our listeners feel some solace from just, any piece that they can take away from this. I want you guys all to know, I do feel like this podcast is a family. We may joke around a lot on this podcast, but I want everyone that listens to this podcast, you should know that you are cared about. I just feel like this group is fantastic. And I think of people that, I'm not as tight with in our team and things like that, and just know, I absolutely do care about you guys. I care about you, and I care about your families. So, and thank you so much for anyone that's a part of our group here. So,
Lance, one last thing, bud.
I think that Evan and Matt both said it really well. This has obviously been a difficult week, and it would have been much more difficult if I didn't feel the love and concern and support of you three, and of my teammates, and of the cycling community, and from my family. And so we're going to miss Mike for sure. He leaves a big void, but it certainly was very therapeutic to be able to sit with you guys, even if it's over Skype, and talk about these things and share kind of what Michael meant to us and what he did for us each personally. So thank you guys for that. I'm glad we did this.
Good. For me, it's just, I'm going to miss Michael tremendously. Some people do and some people don't know this, but when Dialed kind of came to life, it was an idea that I had, and I had this concept of a team. It might have been a little idealistic, but it probably wouldn't be as special as, I'm not going to even say probably, it would not have been as special as it is today without Michael, because he was the very first person I went to and said, hey, I want to start a team, and here's kind of what I was thinking, and kind of, went through a couple bullet points and said, you interested in helping me with this and being on the team? And I can't say it on the podcast, but basically it was absolutely. And you can input some other some other adjectives and modifiers in there, but he was super excited about that. And man, we had such fun sitting down and talking about all of the things that we wanted and the things that we thought were going to be special to the team, and how we wanted to be different. We wanted to be, basically a group of people that did more than just ride and race bikes. And I think a lot of that has come to light, and I'm going to miss him terribly. He has done so much for so many people behind the scenes. But I will take away from this whole, catastrophic loss of, who Michael was and what it was that he meant to the team. And I want to make sure that I do my best to make him proud and do my best to kind of walk in his shoes and borrow from what kind of a person he was and inject that into my personal life so that I can, try and be just, some certain percentage of who he was. I want to be able to give that back. So going to miss you, Mike.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So one more little thing. Michael's celebration will be on November 17th. The time and the location are actually being worked out today. If you guys knew Michael, just kind of keep tabs on what's going on our social media. We'll get that posted out, and there'll be invites for all of you guys who want to come say goodbye to him and celebrate his life, the vibrant man that he was. And we are actually doing something to try and help the family out. So his wife, as you can imagine, is just absolutely crushed. I mean, they were together for a lot of years. I want to say it was like 20 years, and they've got two young children who are 12 and 7. Those boys are crushed as well. And for a family, the last thing you want to be worrying about is putting together all these arrangements. So we've had a tremendous outpouring of support and a tremendous list of people who wanted to contribute and help in some way, shape, or form. So one thing that we're going to do is we're going to plan the entire celebration process, and that's going to take a lot of the load off of his wife's shoulders, hopefully. And we'll obviously take input from her in terms of how she wants it to look and feel, so that we can do our best to celebrate Michael. But in addition to that, we want to actually foot the bill for this thing. So I worked with Sean Martin and his wife Gypsy on putting together a GoFundMe thing, and they did a fantastic job of putting that together. And we put it up on social media, and I'm absolutely floored. They're like, well, we have to put a total in, like what our goal is to raise for money. And we're like, just put $5,000, because we know that that'll cover everything and then some. And then any extra monies that are there, we're going to make a charitable contribution to some sort of philanthropy that was near and dear to Michael and Yolanda. And we're not even 24 hours into posting this thing. We've almost already met that $5,000 mark, and it just floors me. And that just is, again, testament to how much Michael touched people out there and really had a positive impact on their life, or an influence on their life. And people are just wanting to give back. And it's going to be awesome to be able to put on a great celebration to celebrate his life. And it'll be even better to let Michael's legacy live on through a charitable contribution, whether it be to cancer research or something to do with cycling. Either way, I think that it's going to be pretty phenomenal. So I'm excited for what the team has done. I'm excited for who the team has become and how he helped shape and mold that, and what kind of an example he is. And people are paying it back in dividends. It's just awesome. I thank you.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah.
So, any parting thoughts, guys? Anything else you want to say?
I mean, Jake, you put it pretty well there. I think Mike really just embodied Dialed. I mean, what you've built and what the type of teammate that you always talk about that we want to bring onto this team. I mean, that teammate was Dr. Michael Myers. I mean, that's exactly who that person is. So
he's going to be missed. So,
yeah.
Okay. You guys just, if you have anything that you want to add, our social media is always there. You can ping us on the @Dial Podcast on Facebook, or you can email any of us, our first names, at dialpodcast.com. Reach out, and we'd love to hear from you. Hopefully we'll see a bunch of you guys this coming Saturday. And if you need anything else, don't hesitate to ask. Lance, ride carefully, bud. Travel safe. Have a good day. Say hi to all the guys down there in Keep having fun with them. Evan, thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
And sharing all your stories. And same for you, Matt. Thank you for coming in.
Absolutely.
And good to have you back in studio this week. Folks, for listening, we appreciate you, and ride safe. And we'll hopefully talk to you again very soon. Bye for now.